You're listening to Cross Rhythms Plymouth, 96.3 FM online and on DAB here in Plymouth as well. And this is Lifelines. It's another episode of Lifelines. And I got the privilege today of being joined in the studio by a gentleman who, as well as other things, has found himself being an author. We're going to come into that in a little bit. It's Allan Gibbs. Hi, Allan. Great to have you here.
Hi, Dave. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me along.
No, it's brilliant to have you here. And thank you for your willingness to share your story here on Lifeline. So, as we always do then, I'm going to ask you, tell us a little bit about your upbringing, your early years. If you can, tell us what was life like for you? Where were you born and raised? Okay. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm Plymouth born and raised. Lived in Ham Drive in Plymouth when I was first born, which was almost 73 years ago now.
Right.
So I'm getting on a bit now. But my early years were spent obviously with my family, my mum, my dad. I had two brothers and a sister also, all living at home at the time. And there was a lot of love in our family. Even though they weren't church goers, they were God-fearing people.
Right.
Or my mum and dad were, at least, anyway.
Sure.
I unfortunately went the other way. And my upbringing was filled with love and family values, etc.
Amazing. What was what were your memories in general of Plymouth at that time? Is it a place you loved being in? Did you kind of want to get away from it? What was that like for you as
I've never had a sense of adventure really. So, I mean, in all my 72 years, I've only ever been abroad twice.
Right.
That was once to visit Poland, specifically to visit Auschwitz.
Right.
I had a particular interest in going there. And the other time was what you might call a jolly boys outing to Spain.
Sure.
For a week.
Yeah.
Both of those happened in my later years anyway, so I was quite happy being brought up in Plymouth.
Love it.
Quite happy living in Plymouth and made a lot of friends.
Amazing. So Plymouth has really been key to your life, a real key location where you've been born and raised.
Absolutely.
In the fullness of that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, your family, not particularly churchgoers in that sense, but had an awareness of God or kind of God-fearing in that sense. But you not so much. So how would you describe yourself growing up then in relation to life in general, but faith, all of those kinds of things?
Faith never came into my life at all.
Right.
Never entered my life until later years.
Yeah.
We'll talk about later. But faith was never involved at all. All I was interested in was enjoying life, enjoying myself, and enjoying what I class as the fruits of life. So girls, drinking, smoking, all those sorts of things. And in younger years, being a bit of a jack-the-lad, sort of scrumping apples from various orchards and knocking on people's doors and running away and all those sorts of things. Always getting into mischief. Yeah. But nothing too serious.
Yeah. So with school and things like that then, what were your memories there? Was it similar? Were you kind of getting into trouble at school, or were you just kind of keeping your nose dry as best you
could? The only person I used to get in trouble with at school was, funnily enough, our religious education teacher or RK teacher. I think it was religious knowledge teacher. We used to, 3 or 4 of us used to sit at the back of the class, and we used to play a cricket game called How's That?
Right.
I don't know whether you've ever heard of that game.
I think so.
It's just a couple of sort of rolling dice.
Right.
And we used to sit at the back of the class and play that, and rather than listen to any stories about the Bible, etc.
Interesting.
Me and my colleagues were always getting into trouble with the teacher.
Yeah.
For not taking any notice. But other than that, my school days were really good, and until I got to the point of wanting to be out in the big wide world, working, earning money, taking girls out, and all the things that went with teenage life.
Yeah. Well, great. We'll stop for some music, pick up the conversation with Allan, see how life developed for Allan as things progressed from there. You're listening to Lifelines here on Cross Rhythms Plymouth, 96.3 FM, and talking with lifelong Jana, from what we said in that last section, Allan Gibbs, who's been in and around Plymouth his entire life, and rarely left the city. It's been a huge part of your life for all those years. So we're here to talk about your life, especially your faith, and kind of where that came from, and then we'll talk about a book that you've written expressing your faith that you've written in recent years. But where we've got to in your story, that's certainly not anything that you cared about at all, from how you said it.
No, faith never even entered the equation.
Yeah. So life then, how did it develop for you after school and kind of work? What did you head into? What was your hope for life, and what were you going into then? Well,
the only aspiration I had when I left school, they wanted me to stay on to take A-levels.
Right.
Because I was, dare I say, quite an intelligent person. I passed 9 O-levels, I think it was.
Yeah.
They wanted me to stay on for A-levels, but as I said earlier, I just wanted to get out into the world.
Yeah.
Start earning some money and doing what I class as adult things.
Yeah.
So when I left school, my brother-in-law used to work for a company called Burkertex.
Right.
They were textile and dress manufacturers in Plymouth, and he got me a job there, working as an assistant in the workshop.
Yeah.
I stayed there for about 18 months or so, and then I got a job with. I think from there I went to the Co-op laundry and worked there for 6 months or so, and then I got a job as a trainee manager with Oliver's Shoes. I spent a total of 10 years or so with them, working up to manager of my own store in Gloucester, which is where I met my wife, or my then girlfriend. And that's the early part of my employment history. After that I joined Curry's.
Right.
And I stayed with Curry's for several years, and then ended up working in Orpington in Kent. But that's where our son came along, and I didn't want to bring a family up in that part of the country.
Right. Yeah.
Because it all seemed very false. We used to have a saying up there that there were 2 cars in the drive but nothing in the fridge.
Okay.
And that, to me, summed up life in that part of the country.
Sure.
Everything was done for show, for other people's benefits. And
Yeah.
it just all seemed so false. So we moved back to the West Country, and we moved into the house that we've been in now for almost 40 years.
Wow. There you go. So Plymouth, born and raised, and then kind of went away with different jobs and opportunities as you went. Yeah.
Yes.
And then Plymouth kind of called you home, as it does for many, to kind of raise your family.
It certainly does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're married at that stage. You kind of you got a child. How many children did you have? Have you got?
Just the one.
Okay, just the one. And things develop for you. We'll I tell you what. We'll stop for some music here, and we'll kind of fast forward a little bit to where you were as you got closer to coming to faith, sort of when that started to be something that you thought about, or maybe why you started to think more deeply about life, than just, as you say, those things that, let's be honest, most people live their life for: money, opportunities, romance,
Absolutely.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But at some point for you, you started to ask some questions about what life's really about. So we'll stop for music, pick up the conversation with Allan after this. You're listening to Cross Rhythms Plymouth, 96.3 FM. You join me midway through Lifelines here with Allan Gibbs, who has talked about so far, not really having any interest in faith, anything in life apart from just what you could get out of life, eat, drink, be merry, that kind of approach to life, essentially, from how you've described it. But we're kind of fast tracking ahead from where we've been. Talk to me about some of those years around the time, like the sort of 5-10 years before you decided to become a Christian. What was life like for you then? What was changing for you? Why were you starting to think a bit more deeply about things?
Well, I didn't think about faith. It was one specific event in my life which caused me to think more about faith, and that was my mother's death.
Right.
In the preceding sort of 8 or 10 years, as you say, faith still didn't really come into the equation at all.
Right.
I had, in previous years before my mum passed away, I'd lost my dad, my eldest brother, and my sister.
Yeah.
And during those times, I suppose I did ask the question about, what's the purpose of life? There's got to be a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But on those occasions, the thought sort of came and went very, very quickly.
Sure.
And I just carried on with life. At that point, we had our son to bring up. Both me and my wife were working, obviously trying to pay off a mortgage, trying to pay for a car, trying to increase your standard of living and all the things that most people want.
Yeah.
So faith still never really came into it until my mum passed away.
So that's interesting then. So, the challenge that everyone faces, the reality of death and losing loved ones and people around you. It's interesting that you said that started to kind of trigger, well, what's this all about then? Because you start to, when you're faced with it as something real, not just theoretical, it's a bit different, isn't it? Yeah. So your family then particularly, you said it about in the first section, were you close to them all through your life? Like you sounded like you were quite a close family when you had your upbringing. Were you close throughout? And when those people died, was it particularly difficult because of that, or what was that like?
I was very close to all my family.
Yeah.
I did have a bit of a tempestuous relationship with my eldest brother.
Sure.
Even though I still loved him.
Yeah.
Until about 2 years prior to his death.
Yeah.
We had a massive falling out. And I can remember saying to him, I never want to see you or talk to you again.
Wow. Yeah.
And I upheld that promise, I suppose, to myself.
Sure. Yeah.
Even to the extent that when he passed away and it came to his funeral, I didn't attend the funeral even.
Wow. Yeah.
That's how strongly I had been hurt, or felt I had been hurt.
Yeah.
And that caused a bit of a wave, shall we say, amongst my sister, my mum, and my other brother.
Yeah.
But I stuck to my guns. I couldn't do anything else. Obviously, the funeral had been and gone.
Sure.
It wasn't until a long time later, and I mentioned that in one of the books that I've written, that I suddenly realised that the only person I was hurting with all that malice that I was still holding in was me. Sure.
Well, that's really interesting. We'll come to that specific point a bit later on. But, you mentioned there in that last section how you didn't really think about faith at all, fleeting thoughts of like, what's the purpose of life as you lost these family members.
Yes.
And it was all different when your mum died. What was the difference there then? What was the difference for you personally that made you think more deeply and actually go, I need to, act on something here?
Okay, well, the first thing that strikes me about that is that 2 years prior to her death, she was still living on her own, quite independent.
Okay.
But she had a fall one day, and I think she broke her ankle.
Yeah.
She ended up in hospital because of that. Whilst in hospital, she had a stroke.
Right.
One or two other things, which ended up with the last 2 years of her life being spent in a care home.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that she'd always said she dreaded because she was afraid that she would be left alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a promise to her at the time, because I was the only remaining family member in the area, that I would not allow that to happen. So every night, virtually every night for 2 years after work, I used to go to her at the care home.
Yeah.
And on weekends, I would spend even longer. Because of that, my relationship with my mum grew even stronger.
Yeah, yeah.
Because of the amount of time I was spending with her.
Yeah, yeah.
And when she passed away, it was very difficult for me, obviously, first of all, from the point of view that I'd lost my mum, who was a big part of my life. Secondly, that at the time she was taken ill, I was working in an office in Kingsbridge, which is about an hour's drive from Plymouth. I had the phone call on the Monday morning to say she was going downhill fast. Rang my wife, who only worked at Crown Hill. By the time I'd got to Cann House at Tamerton, an hour later, she'd already passed away. And that hit me really, really hard.
Yeah.
The fact that I was not there at the very time that I felt she needed me.
Sure. Well, that's a really good place to leave this section, Alan. We'll come back and talk more with Alan here on Lifelines after this. All right, you're listening to Lifelines here on Cross Rhythms Plymouth, and you join me in conversation with Allan Gibbs. Check out our YouTube channel and our website for this interview in full if you've only just tuned in and missed the earlier section. So, Alan, you're talking about the years in which you started to find faith. What sort of age were you at this point in your life?
I was 62.
Okay, so you're 62. And as you've described it, your mum has sadly passed. Her health sadly deteriorated from having a fall and a stroke and various health complications and things. Yeah. But I loved how you described it in that last section, that you really committed to be there for her every night while she was in that care home. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because we do face the passing of all of our loved ones at one point. That's something that's true for everyone. Yeah. But the reality is, we're closer to some people than others. As much as I'm sure for many of us, love our friends and family, there's something about that strength of relationship that you developed that, as you described it, made that feel really different and more difficult to process, I imagine, in terms of the loss. I
think when my mum passed away, it almost felt to me as if a piece of me had died with her. Yeah. That's how it felt to me.
Was that, I mean, obviously she's your mum, but was part of that as well because it had become such a part of your routine, seeing her, being with her? It was a huge part of what you were doing at that stage of life as well as
most,
just
most probably, yes. Most probably.
Yeah. So tell us then, Alan, what happened next? What did you do anything particularly? How did you sort of process this? What sort of led you forward after this point?
Well, my surviving brother, who lives in Preston, Lancashire, has been a Christian and still is a Christian for about 50 odd years, 60 years even. And he came down to Plymouth, obviously on the news that my mum had passed away. He came to Plymouth to help me to sort out all the various arrangements for funerals, etc. Yeah. And I'm not quite sure how he'd heard of it, but he had heard of Hope Baptist Church in Plymouth. Okay. And he used to attend a Baptist church himself in Preston. So maybe it came through his pastor. I don't know. Anyway, one of the evenings whilst he was here, he asked me if we could try and find out where Hope Baptist was. So we literally drove around the town until we found where Hope Baptist was. Right. And then during that first week that he came down, he would try to engage me in discussing the Bible, praying with him, or him praying for me. Yeah. Was that something you were open to at the time, or was it a bit like, oh, can we stop this? Because was it like, did it feel imposing, or was it something that you were interested in? I was open to it purely and simply from the point of view that he was my brother. Sure. I was hurting. Yeah. and I was looking for any sort of release from that hurt.
Yeah.
So I was open to it, but if I'm going to be honest, not that receptive.
Yeah, sure.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then after the funeral had taken place and everybody had gone home, I'm left with still feeling, what is the meaning to life?
Mm-hmm.
There must be a reason. And that immediately took me to the thought of Hope Baptist Church. So I looked up Hope Baptist Church online, found out the email address, and I wrote an email to the pastor. I didn't know his name at the time. I just wrote an email saying that I felt like a lost sheep, didn't know where to turn, what to do. And he wrote back to me and invited me. This was on I think a Thursday. He wrote back to me the following morning and said, would I like to come along to church on Sunday? And as it happened, the sermon was about the lost sheep.
No way.
It was.
Wow.
And it was given by an American couple.
Yeah.
Can't remember their names now. And that was my first visit ever to a church.
Wow.
Apart from what I classed as being forced to attend the normal
weddings,
hatches,
funerals.
matches and dispatches.
Yeah.
But to go to a church in my own right as a person seeking something, that was the very first time ever.
Amazing. Well, we'll stop for more music again now and pick up with Allan after this. You're listening to Cross Rhythms Plymouth, 96.3 FM. This is Lifelines. I'm in conversation with Allan Gibbs, who has written this book. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it here, The Path I Never Planned. We haven't quite got to the point where you've written this book yet, Allan, in your story. We will get there. But you are, at this stage, from what you've said, you're really looking for answers of what life's all about following the passing of your mum. And the ways in which your brother had somehow heard of Hope Baptist Church, him being a Christian suggested it to you and you went there. So what happened next? So you had that emailing the pastor at the time, Andrew Gardner, was it then?
It was Andrew.
And
yes.
And you emailed him saying you felt like a lost sheep. The service for that week was about lost sheep.
It was.
So did that make an impact immediately? What was your thought straight away? How did things develop for you?
Well, if I'm going to be perfectly honest about it, my first thought when I read that the sermon was going to be about the lost sheep, I thought to myself, well, that sounds too much of a coincidence to me. It sounds to me as if they're trying to reel me in,
right.
As it were.
It's a setup.
A setup, exactly. But nevertheless, I decided to go ahead and make the visit to the church. And I think that was the best thing I'd ever done, because I was suddenly greeted with a group of strangers who had nothing but love and compassion for me, and also love and compassion for their Saviour. And it was just fantastic to be in that environment at that time. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it after the initial first service. I wasn't sure whether it was for me or not, but I decided to go back again the following week, and then things snowballed from there.
Yeah.
I went on to meet several people from the congregation who prayed for me and with me. And I just started having a relationship with a lot of people that had a lot of love.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic to experience.
Amazing. So how did that develop in terms of was there a point at which you felt, okay, now I'm a Christian, now I have my own faith? When did that come in for you? Was it just kind of steadily, slowly? How did that develop?
No, it all happened pretty quickly for me, really. Right. I on my second visit to church, I met a lady called Bronya and Tom Collins. And Tom took me under his wing. He more or less became a mentor for me, really. And I'm very, very grateful to him. But he invited me along to a talk that was going to be given in a couple of weeks' time by a man called Eric Delve, apparently a well-known evangelist. Obviously, I'd never heard of him.
Yeah.
But during the talk, he walked down the middle of the church and he looked at me and he asked me my name, and he said, I know God has a plan for you. I don't know what it is, but I know God has a plan for you. And I thought to myself, well, here's someone that I've never ever believed in, believes in me. That was my first thought.
Wow. Yeah.
And at the end of the seminar talk, Eric invited people up to be prayed over and anointed. And I went up, joined the people that were being anointed. And at that point, I just felt as if a load of love was being poured into me from somewhere. And that's really when things started to change so much for me.
Yeah.
From that point on, although a lot of people say that it was like a honeymoon period.
Yeah.
And I do agree with that. At the time, I thought it was the best thing that had ever happened to me.
Sure.
And I felt so alive and so full of love and compassion to share with other people.
Amazing. So you had a real sense of God, an actual tangible experience of an encounter
with the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, of knowing what God is like and encountering the Holy Spirit for yourself and God indwelling with you. So that, before that you'd seen it in others, the people in the church, you maybe heard teaching from the front, but that's brilliant. There's nothing wrong with that. But then it suddenly became more real for you from that moment on. Well, absolutely. We're going to stop for music, come back for the final part of the conversation here with Allan after this. You're listening to Cross Rhythms Plymouth, our final part of a conversation here on Lifelines with Allan Gibbs, who has written a book called The Path I Never Planned. I'll get to this now and then we'll bring it up at the end. But where can people get that book if they want to read it? Because I know that in it is a lot of your life story. It's sort of poems that you've written. It's journal entries that you'd written through your journey of faith. But where can people buy that? And then we'll bring that up again at the end.
Well, it's available through Amazon.
Right.
You can get it from Amazon Kindle. Mm-hmm. If you have a Kindle account, you can, or is it a Kindle E?
Yeah.
I can't say it's a Kindle subscription maybe or something. You can get it free of charge.
Okay, right.
As a Kindle book, it's £2.99. And from Amazon Books, you can get it for £5.99.
Okay. Great.
Or you can order it directly through me, and I might be able to do something on the price because I get them at author's costs.
Sure. Yeah.
Having said that, any profits and proceeds are going to Hope Baptist Church, some of which are already gone.
Yeah.
So yes, I would, anybody who wanted it, I'd hope that they would pay the full price. And
brilliant. Yeah, great. So Amazon, The Path I Never Planned is the book title to search for Allan Gibbs, ALLAN, or email us info@crplymouth.co.uk if you want us to connect you with Allan to buy it, as he said, from himself. But let's carry on with the story then, Allan. So you had this amazing experience in which you were prayed for and really felt God's presence with you, and you kind of described it then a bit of a honeymoon period. And I know you bring it up in the book as well, that there's a sense of, it's interesting kind of self-awareness how you raise it in the book, that you knew you were at a low ebb going into this whole experience, that your mum had died, mentally not in a great space. You're suddenly in an environment of a church where you're surrounded by people who are really welcoming and caring and loving. You're aware in the book of like, well, is this all it is, in the sense of like, is it just to get me through this time of when I'm feeling rough? Or is it something that's going to stay? Is it something that's going to be sustainable? Is it something more real than just a quick pick-me-up in that sense? So talk me through the years after that. We don't have loads of time for it, but no. How did that carry on for you? Obviously, you're here and you've written a book, so things did develop. What happened?
Well, after the initial honeymoon period, I stayed with the church for approximately 2 years, trying to help out with things like soup run, attending prayer meetings, and I was really involved in lots of different things. And then I was rocked by a couple of things. First of all, our then minister, Andrew Gardner, was going through a phase where he was struggling to fight cancer. Mm-hmm. And my wife at the same time was also diagnosed with a brain tumour.
Right, yeah.
They said it was operable, and it was, at the time, a non-malignant one, but nevertheless, she spent 14 hours on an operating table, which left her with some side effects anyway. And those two things combined put a lot of stress on my relationship with God. Mm-hmm. Even to the extent where I walked away from the church for approximately 2 years. Yeah. Still searching for answers, but not finding any. Right. Apart from the answers that I'd already received, which I'd sort of put on the back burner. Yeah. So that went on for about 2 years. And there was an occasion, I haven't got time to go into it now, but there was another occasion when I suddenly realised that even though I'd stepped away from God, he hadn't stepped away from me. Mm. So I came back to the church. I went back to Hope Baptist Church, and I've been there ever since. But since then, my areas of mission, if you like, have changed. So I no longer help with things like soup run, etc., but I do, I do a podcast. Yeah. As Dave said, I've written 2 books, one book about my initial journey and another book of poetry. Mm.
What's that second one called? What's the poetry book
called?
The
second one is called Faith with Frayed Edges.
Yeah, great.
I don't know if you can see that there.
Yeah.
And that is, just basically that was another gift which has been bestowed upon me, as far as I'm concerned, by God, because I'd never ever written a poem in my life before coming to faith.
Wow. That was the other thing I was going to come to, really, is the book, or both books. Before we get into that and that question, I suppose, would you categorize it then, you come to faith, you find Jesus, you have that real encounter that's really tangible. Mm-hmm. And as you say, it's interesting because it doesn't, and this is something I think some people who don't have faith don't really get, but it doesn't make you immune to life, does it? It doesn't make you immune to the challenges, as you said. No. Andrew Gardner was going through cancer. He was your minister who had helped you a lot, and your wife had cancer as well. So you're still facing those challenges. So would you say it's kind of like, it's like a maturing process? It's like an ability to hold on to faith and weather those storms that you were going through, essentially.
Yes, I think what faith does, just going back very briefly to that honeymoon period, you think when you're a new Christian that everything, now you're a Christian, you believe in God and Jesus Christ, everything is going to be roses, everything is going to be hunky-dory, and that's not the case. And I think that's what I found out when I walked away from church. When I came back to church, and in the years since coming back to church, I realised that faith is not about everything being rosy, but it's about God helping us through the difficult times because of the faith that we have in Him. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. That's really good. So that's really well described. And you mentioned there that, poetry was never something you did until you came to faith. Had you ever written a book? Was that?
No, I'd
something you'd
never
ever
written a
done?
book.
Why did you write the book then? Why did
Well-
you feel those things came about, and why did you pursue? Because there's a lot that goes into it. You
Yeah,
come
yeah.
here and you've got a book, but you have to write it down, you have to edit it, you have to get it published, you have to do all those things. Why were you motivated to follow all of that through and be
Well,
here
as
today?
I said to you off air earlier on, I was invited by Andrew Gardner and his wife Catherine to start a journal. That was back in February 2015.
Yeah.
I kept up a journal, writing every day for about just over 12 months. And I've got a huge file of paperwork at home, which is where this book comes from.
Yeah.
And several times during the writing of that journal, I put down my comment that I was writing it in the hope that someone in the future would be reading it for themselves.
Mm.
But then all that paper sat in the drawer for 10 years and did nothing
Right.
other than comfort me to the fact that I knew I'd done it. And I'm not sure where the idea for the book came from, to be perfectly honest. But just a few months ago, I thought, well, I'm going to try and turn the journal into a book if I can.
Mm-hmm. So
I started working on it, and it took me about 3 months to get to this little book from this huge, great pile of paperwork.
Wow. 3 months is that's a quick turnaround. Fair play.
Well, I was helped to edit it a little bit by an AI app on my phone.
Sure. Yeah.
That helped me to narrow down some of the wording, etc.
Yeah.
So I was assisted by technology as well. But
Great.
yeah,
That's beautiful. Well, Alan, thank you for taking the time. I wish we had a lot longer to talk, but that's kind of where we're going to have to leave it for this interview. As mentioned, and I'll hold it up again, one of the two books, the kind of first book that Alan wrote, is this one called The Path I Never Planned. You can pick it up on Amazon, and if you've got a subscription to Kindle, then it's free there as well. And yeah, like Alan said, Alan said it to us off air, really hopes that's a blessing to you listening to this, and maybe you're in that same position of where Alan was all those years ago, thinking, what's life really all about? Well, grab his book, read it, and hopefully it speaks to you. Alan, thank you so much, and wish you all the best.